Hello, otakus and pre-meds of the internet. Dr. Anime here once again. Grab your headbands and prepare to run with your arms behind you, because today we'll be visiting one of the big three of shonen anime. We are going to uncover how a single jutsu from Naruto can explain the paradox of sex, natural selection, and the different forms of lateral gene transfer. Now, one of the great things about Naruto and its sequel, Naruto Shippuden, was the variety of jutsus employed by the ninjas throughout the story. You had jutsus that ranged from making the equivalent of C4 out of thin air, literally giving someone to death stare, and bringing the freaking dead back to life so you can create your own undead army. While all of these are cool, of course, we will be utilizing a jutsu that has been the staple of the series since the very first episode. Used by the titular character Naruto Uzumaki, the jutsu in question is none other than
Shadow Clone Jutsu!
Yup, the one and only Shadow Clone Jutsu. Using this jutsu, one can make multiple identical doppelgangers, with the downside being that your chakra is split evenly among the clones, dispersing your total power. However, having numerous clones can prove useful. This is especially demonstrated when in episode 55 of Naruto Shippuden, we learn that when the jutsu is released and the clones are dispersed, their memories are transferred back to the user of the jutsu, theoretically allowing one to learn techniques that would take years in a matter of weeks, with the help of hundreds or even thousands of shadow clones. Ugh! Can you imagine how useful this would be in real life? Just think of how much extra sleep and ditching class you could get away with. Anyways, lack of chakra notwithstanding, given that Naruto can reproduce himself through the jutsu, so to speak, and also later on marries best girl Hinata, and produces a wonderful set of produces a set of children, the Shadow Clone Jutsu provides the perfect analogy of the paradox of sex, or the problem of sexual reproduction when compared to asexual reproduction. While many scientists have asked this question, in 1978, John Maynard Smith provided a mathematical model that summarizes the problem. But let's enhance it with the analogy of Naruto. Let's say in Generation 1 we have one asexually producing organism, that is, Naruto doing the Shadow Clone Jutsu, and a pair of sexually reproducing organisms, aka Naruto and Hinata. In Generation 2, asexual Naruto produces 4 shadow clones and the couple have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Now in Generation 3, all 4 shadow clones can produce even more shadow clones, for a grand total of 16 if 4 per each. However, on the sexual reproduction side, we have a problem. Male organisms can't give birth, so only half of Generation 2 can have kids, leading to only 8 children in Generation 3. Smith called this the twofold cost of males, and man, does the term sound like an indirect roast for some reason. So, this begs the question, why sex? Well, after much research, 2 hypotheses have emerged that seem to show why sexual reproduction is advantageous. The first is the purifying selection hypothesis. Remember, in asexual reproduction such as bacteria, the reproductive process, in this case binary fission, produces an offspring with identical DNA, thus having the same traits as the parent. This can potentially have dire consequences. Let's say in Generation 1, Naruto has a deleterious mutation that causes him to continuously shout, "Sasuke!" Because of asexual reproduction, every single offspring will have this deleterious trait, and because of the disadvantage bestowed by this mutation, fewer offspring will survive than predicted by the model. Now, what happens if this mutation occurs in a sexually reproducing organism? According to Mendel's law of segregation, when gametes are created through the process of meiosis, the 2 copies of an allele are segregated from each other so that each sperm or egg cell has only 1 allele for each gene. Thus, there is only a 50-50 chance that an offspring will inherit the faulty allele, given that all of Hinata's alleles are normal. Thus, not all of Naruto and Hinata's children are doomed to a death by yelling, "Sasuke!" The second hypothesis is the changing environment hypothesis. That is, clones of a single organism will have more of a problem adapting to a drastic change in the environment, for example, a new disease. Because all the offspring of an asexually reproducing organism are genetically identical, they are equally susceptible to a new disease as a parent. Thus, if the disease is deadly for the parent, there is a high likelihood it will be deadly for the offspring as well. Sexually reproducing organisms are a completely different story. Almost everything about sexual reproduction screams, No, not that! Everything about it screams genetic diversity. During meiosis, crossing over allows for some genes from one homologous chromosome trade places with one from the other homologous chromosome, thus mixing up genes inherited from one's parents. In addition, Mendel's law of independent assortment means that alleles of different genes are assorted independently into different gametes. All this increases genetic variation among offspring. Finally, outcrossing, or mating genetically different individuals, introduces even more genetic diversity. All of this diversity means that some offspring may possibly inherit a better resistance to the new disease, ensuring that the species evolves to combat the disease. Thus, both the purifying selection and changing environment hypothesis show that sex does indeed have its benefits. But Dr. Anime, you may be saying, how do bacteria develop antibiotic resistance if they all have equal susceptibility to antibiotics? Well, that too can be explained using Naruto's shadow clone jutsu, and this will also simultaneously demonstrate natural selection at work. It's important to remember that asexual reproduction should create identical offspring on paper. However, because the mechanisms of reproduction are imperfect, random mutations can occur after thousands upon thousands of reproductive events. While most are deleterious and lead to death of the offspring, in some situations, these mutations can lead to benefits. Using Naruto, for example, say an opponent uses a move that none of the shadow clones can dodge except two. Those two shadow clones had randomly discovered how to dodge the attack, and if those clones now make more clones, the entire group of shadow clones now have the ability to dodge the foe's attack. This is natural selection at work. Because of random mutations in the population that can be inherited, there is a differential reproductive success in the population. Only the shadow clones who somehow survived the attack got to make more clones, and because the new clones now all can dodge the attack, this shows that the group of individuals that survived the best was not a random sample of the population. In real life, because of mutations due to imperfect reproductive mechanisms, natural selection can occur, allowing a few bacteria with resistance to antibiotics to survive and thrive. Finally, besides random mutation, bacteria and other prokaryotes can also acquire genetic diversity without reproducing through lateral gene transfer. While the majority of a prokaryote's DNA is within one circular chromosome, bits of DNA called plasmids contain extra genes, for example, some that bestow antibacterial resistance, that can be transferred to other prokaryotes through three main methods: transformation, conjugation, and transduction. First, transformation. Using shadow clone jutsu one more time as an analogy, suppose this time there is a plasmid that encodes for the ability to say,
Believe it!
Transformation is when a prokaryote takes up a plasmid in the environment that had been secreted by another cell or had been released when the cell lysed, or pretty much exploded. This is similar to what happens when Naruto uses shadow clones for training. When one shadow clone disappears, or lyses in this case, the information from that one clone is taken up by the other clones. Another method of lateral gene transfer, transduction, occurs when a virus picks up DNA in the host prokaryote, moves to another host, and dumps the DNA there. Using the analogy, if a random character learned to say,
Believe it!
from one clone, then that character could go over to another clone and teach,
Believe it!
to that clone as well. Last but not least, conjugation is when two prokaryotes get in contact with one another through a conjugation tube, allowing for the direct transfer of genetic information. In Naruto terms, this would be when a clone just teaches another clone how to say,
Believe it!
Yeah, that one's not too hard to understand. So there you have it. By using a single jutsu from Naruto, we can successfully use it to remember the paradox of sex, the process of natural selection, and lateral gene transfer. Now, for next month's episode, let's take a step back from the academic for some stories about how I got into anime and how that helped me along my pre-med journey. After that,
Except
We'll take a look at how a certain anime that definitely was not just hinted at teaches us about the nervous system. Anyways, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, hit that bell, and remember, even you can become a Hokage a medical professional someday. Believe it! I can't believe I just used the 2 cringiest lines from Naruto in a video. How will I ever let this down?